This is Caffeine and Coils, and I'm Deanna.
And I'm Jenny.
And we have a special guest with us today, Gary.
Welcome back to
Hello.
Caffeine and Coils, Gary.
I'm honored to be back. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, so what is our hot topic for today?
Gary is going to tell us about how businesses can grow in the HVAC industry and how the business development group helps them do that. Right?
Well said. I like it.
Yeah, thanks for that. So what role does a clear vision play in business growth in our industry, and how can you help define their vision and stick to the plan?
Okay. That's a great question to start off with because it's everything. Years ago, vision and mission statements, that was kind of a hot topic, and it kind of disappeared for a while. And here's why. Because people were developing them, the owners would come up with them themselves. Sometimes they would include their team, but sometimes they would go, okay, we need something to put on the wall because everybody else does that. And they would put them on the wall, but the problem is that it ended there. They didn't get input from their team. They didn't get input from anyone outside the company and learn from others. And they left them there, and they just gathered dust. I was a territory manager before I moved into this role in business development. And I could think of several customers that I could go up there right now, and that's all I'm going to give you is a direction. I could go up there right now, and I guarantee you that statement is still on the wall with a dust-covered frame. And that's as far as it got. And so that's the problem. But not throwing the whole idea out, that's part of the key thing is developing a vision and mission statement, have input from your team, have input from, learning about the whys of what we do, and to educate your team, your entire company, about this is who we are, this is why we're different, this is how we stand out. One of my favorite books, everybody's probably heard of by now, Atomic Habits. The author says basically that if you put the process in place, then the goals will take care of themselves. So I think it's immeasurably important to have one. That's kind of like your roadmap and your report card all at once.
I love it. That's really good advice.
Yeah, I actually listened to that on an audiobook. It's a really good audiobook.
Fantastic. Mm-hmm.
What about the role of technology in HVAC business growth?
Here's the problem. I thought when you asked that question, the first thing I thought about was the comedian Jeff Foxworthy used to tell a story about his dad. And he said at some point, my dad decided when it comes to fashion that stop the train, I'm getting off. And he quit caring about what he looked like. If he wore clothes for 25 years, he didn't care. Of course, a lot of times they come back in style. But, and I think a lot of business owners, at least it's been my experience as a territory manager, now business development group manager, that a lot of business owners go, hey, wait a minute, this is going way too fast. Here's the deal. If you're going to play the game, you got to keep up. And it is crucial to answer your question, Deanna. It's crucial to keep up when it comes to a field service management. It has to be via technology. Unless you're content, and that's fine, to stay a 1 or 2 person operation, and that's fine. I mean, we love those people. But if you're going to grow, then you have to have technology, field service management, a proposal software, a proposal system. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that if y'all ask me some questions about that. It doesn't take much for me to answer that question. But also things like XOI technology that we use in our company to interface with our dealers while their technicians are on the job, and it just expedites the whole process. And so it is very crucial to stay up with that.
Yeah, that was kind of the second part of my question was what types of investments would you recommend making? So the field service technology and that type of stuff.
Exactly. Field service management tool, and there are a lot of good tools out there. A proposal system, we believe in propose and close. And then I'm a big fan of XOI with the developments they're making, streamlining processes, having data at your fingertips, capturing serial numbers and things like that. It just so expedites the whole process. So that's three that come to mind right off.
Okay.
I think it's like a no-brainer in today's world that we need the data. And not just the data that XOI for the serial numbers and things like that, the data to track where our customer success is through that field service management software and things like that. So I think technology is just, it's getting to be where you can't get around it. Paper is not the way to go anymore.
You can't hide.
Yeah.
You know.
So what are some effective strategies to increase customer retention and enhance the customer experience?
Okay, great question. Customer retention, the territory manager and me again. I was the territory manager for 30 plus years, so it's ingrained in me. The first thing I would tell a customer is you've got to have maintenance agreements. You've got to wrap your arms around your customers to retain those customers, because it's critical, because it costs a lot of money. We used to say to get the phone ring, but to get the lead coming in through another process electronically, whatever, it costs a lot of money. So we can't afford for it to be a one and done with that customer. As dealers, I used to challenge my dealers, put your arms around those customers and make sure, because it leads to so many things. It leads to putting your arms around them, developing a relationship with the tech that comes in, so when it's time for a change out, and he or she comes in from the basement and goes, well, we've been talking about this for several years, it's time for a change out. The likelihood of that company who's put their arms around that customer of getting the change out, they're very high. A lot more than if they would have said, hey, thank you for the business, for the change out. We'll see you in 10 or 12 years when it's time to do it again. It's a crapshoot then.
Yeah.
It's critical for that. And, I used to talk to dealers, and they would say, I'd find out, okay, they've been in business 10 years. How many maintenance agreements do you have? Oh, we got 200. That's only 20 a year. It should be a regular thing that your company not only challenges the technicians with and the office personnel when they interface with the customer, but also saying, what does this mean to us? What does this mean to our company, for the livelihood of our company? And so that's a customer retention. You can kill a little passion about that.
We actually talked about that on an episode a while ago, and I know it was brought up that if you are on a maintenance contract with certain HVAC companies, especially in the summer when it's 90 degrees, you kind of get moved to the top of the list to be the first ones to fix because you're loyal to them. And I think that, too, as someone who does not like to be hot, that's important to me.
No, I understand. It's critical. And the other way, and I'm sure I'll mention this again, this seems like old hat, but it's critical, is customer service. Being known for your customer service as a company. That's the kind of companies that people come back to. I'll use the Chick-fil-A example. I mean, you know what you're going to get. If you're in Atlanta, Georgia, or Hattiesburg, Mississippi, or Pensacola, Florida, when you roll up in a Chick-fil-A drive-through, you know what you're going to get. And that should be each HVAC company's idea, or maybe standard, to go, we're going to duplicate that. I mean, you don't have to say, my pleasure. You don't have to say that. But be known for someone who wants to, help customers, and that draws customers back in if they feel like they're valued and cared for.
And as a customer, I mean, I don't worry so much about, is this the best deal, or where can I get this cheaper, if I'm getting really good customer service.
Exactly, because if you're intellectually honest, you know that there's a price to hire and retain good people who provide that service. Deanna, good question.
What do you think is the right time for an HVAC company to expand their service offerings? And what are some pitfalls to watch out for doing that?
You know, thinking about that, there are really a couple of angles of that. Number one would be market driven. And I'm going to take you back as recently as 2020 to talk about that. Indoor air quality has always been on our radar as a distributor, certainly, and we try to socialize that to our dealers. It's important. You're in the home. Indoor air quality is critically important. You've heard the statistics or the example of how the air inside your home is less healthy than the air outside your home. And so we've always talked about that. Some dealers did it well, some not so well. Well, when COVID hit in 2020, it became critical. And a lot of these folks that were kind of lagging behind, that were, slow to adopt this process, they were scrambling, going, well, what do we do? And the reason that this was driven, first of all, for obvious reasons, but the second reason is people were spending a whole lot more time, as opposed to spending a third of their life in their homes. A lot of them were spending a half, COVID, 3/4, yeah. and some of your neighbors, you never saw until 2021. So they were in there for a long time. And so we challenged, and there's a lot of indoor air quality products on the horizon. And I'm making this kind of into an advertisement for indoor air quality, but just to give an example. And so we said, pick 3, best, better, good. And a lot of our dealers were successful and have used that as a platform to continue that. So I think it's market driven as far as the conditions. But the other thing is just to kind of know what's going on in the industry and to kind of see the things that are coming, like developments in technology we talked about earlier. And then, you asked me, what are the pitfalls? Once you decide on a tactic, okay, we're going to expand into this market or whatever, the pitfalls are not communicating to your organization the why, not the what. Okay, we're now in the indoor air quality business. Oh, great. Well, tell me more. We not only have to say, here's why, here's what it looks like, here's what it means to our customers, here's what it means to us, and then finally, here's the training to be able to make this happen. So you're comfortable, you understand. There's the pitfall, Deanna. So yeah. That's just kind of something that came to mind because I've seen it so many times happen in dealerships.
It's a big undertaking because, that's a lot of communication that has to happen internally, not just externally to your customers that you're now offering that, but internally to just get everybody up to speed and how to sell the product and how to use the product, how to install the product, how to, speak intelligently about it and answer questions about it. So that's a good point.
And getting them to care about it because, it's easier to sell a service that you believe in and that you care about than it is to just try to sell something just to sell it.
I believe that, and we kind of landed on the indoor air quality section, but it can be true for any product. We're firm believers in trying out a product, and a lot of the vendors we are allied with will give a personal discount for certainly the leadership of the company, but even the technicians, to put it in your home so you can talk intelligently about it. And there's no better of an endorsement than I've got this in my home and we love it.
Yes. So how important is branding for growth in HVAC, and what marketing strategies have you found to be the most effective?
Well, marketing aside, and not really aside, I'm not going to act like I'm an expert on marketing. I'll leave that to you folks who are experts in marketing. But branding is critical. I teach internally a section to our some of our employees about branding. And I challenge them, and this is true of a company, of individuals, to realize, I started off by saying, when you think of a brand that's successful and it means success, it means they're going to take care of you. Of course, the first one that comes up is Chick-fil-A, but there are others that come up. And then I segue to the fact that whether you know it or not, you have a brand. based on the way you conduct yourself, you handle yourself under pressure, how you can answer questions, how customer service oriented you are. And that's true of an individual. And of course, individuals make up the company. So to answer the first part of the question, yeah, it's critically important. First of all, to understand you as a company have a brand. And so I'm a firm believer in building that brand. And on the marketing side, you folks would tell us on the marketing side that, you know, there's different types of advertising. There's brand building, and then there's putting forth an offer. But brand building is a lot of times overlooked. I used to have customers up in North Georgia, and they would say, hey, I'm a little slow. Let's run an ad this week. And I would say, why don't you just give me that money that you were going to run the ad with, and let's just throw it out the window because it's the same thing. Because there has to be a consistent effort to build that brand and make that offer. But as far as ways to do it, I mean, you know, obviously we've all heard word of mouth is the best advertising. And that whole customer service element, I'm going to bring it back to that again. That's the best brand you can have because people talk about that. Just 2 days ago, I got asked by a guy in my circle of influence, hey, I know you had this done. Who do you recommend? Who did you go with? Do you like them? It's critical. So I think that's a key. The customer service element is overlooked a lot of times. So I won't get into the depths of marketing because, you know, my experience with marketing is from a sales section. So I'm not going to pretend to be the expert, but I will say that customer service angle is crucial in building your brand.
I do agree with you, though. I think that's a very good point, is that is a big part of your brand is your customer service and your technicians being inside customers' homes and how they feel about that experience.
What are some strategies that HVAC businesses can use to stay resilient and continue to grow during economic downturns?
Good question, because they come. You know, I think back to 2008, 2009 when we had the new construction downturn, and they certainly show up. And so I think that, you know, I think it takes the leadership of the company going, okay, what are we going to do? First of all, you can't be surprised by these things. Now, certain things you can be, you have to be. Nobody was looking for COVID, you know.
Yeah.
But there are other things that if you keep up with what's going on in the world, look at market forecasts, you can kind of be prepared for this coming. So the leadership of your company has to, it can't be all internally focused and we're just here in this company and this is all we know. That way you're surprised, you know, but you don't want to be surprised. You want to be looking down the road. So I think, first of all, I would say take heart because we're in the Southeast in the heating and air business. And I don't know if you ladies have figured it out yet. I say that tongue in cheek, but it gets hot and muggy. And we're as recession proof in the Southeast as you can be. So we are thankful that obviously we're in the Southeast. That's a good thing. But as far as preparing for those times, I think obviously being well capitalized is part of that. Knowing that it's not always going to be this way. It's just like your household. You know, you never know. You know, the experts will tell you to have 6 to 9 to 12 months of working income, if just in case something happens. So you're prepared for that, knowing that it's going to come. But then you got to figure out when it happens what you're going to do about it. I think back to one of my old dealers who walked in and said to me, and I wasn't really doing a whole lot of business with him, but he walked in 2008, 2009 and said, hey, I see the tea leaves. I'm reading the tea leaves. I know that this new construction is slowing down. I need to get in the replacement business. I need to get in the service business. Can you guys help me? And of course, we were able to because that's who we are. You know, this is part of the business development group as far as helping customers and coming alongside them in a lot of ways. But one of them is to get into markets maybe they've never explored. And he did that, and he ended up being a 4-time winner of the Carrier President's Club Award. That's the factory authorized dealer. That's the next level up. That's like the the cream of the crop, quite frankly. And he saw what was going on, and he responded. When it hits is not the time for hand wringing. What are we going to do? And because as an owner, you're setting the tone for the whole company, and people are watching you and going, what are we going to do? And you have to be kind of like the picture of perseverance and almost be unflappable, at least in public.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So a long way to go to answer your question, but I hope that was helpful.
How can forming strategic partnerships benefit your HVAC business? So besides that strategic partnership that you just mentioned with Mingledorff's, what other partnerships can be beneficial?
Okay, let me start with one that's overlooked, and it's other dealers. You've heard the old statement, no man or woman for that case is an island. No one was meant to do this alone. We need other people. But what I found with dealers is that a lot of times it's lonely because they don't have connections with other people in the industry. Now, you may not be best buds with the person down the street, especially if you're in a small town, but what if you developed a relationship with other dealers in other areas of, say, the Mingledorff's footprint? And we try to provide a way for that with, dealer meetings and trade shows and, incentive trips where those connections are made. And by the way, that happens all the time. They develop lifelong relationships, and even to the point of becoming a part of a mixed group where you come in from different areas of the Southeast. And what are you seeing? What are you seeing? What are you guys doing about this? So that kind of an industry ally is the most overlooked. So I would challenge every dealer out there to connect. There's other ways of connecting. In Georgia, there's Conditioned Air Association of Georgia. In other states in our footprint, I'm sure there are other things, either local or statewide, that they can connect with. It just takes the effort to do that. And the payoff is well worth it because you get to hear from other people and you realize, hey, we're not the only ones having that issue. And you can hear down the road. So that's one, but, obviously you said Mingledorff, that we think that's key. And when you do make these, when you do have these industry allies, to me, unless there's a reason not to, go into them, be it, again, a field service management company or another ally, be another vendor, go into them with the long term in mind. Because you can't really develop with a ally unless you spend time with them long term and they know, hey, they're committed, and I'm talking about a vendor now. They're committed to us, we're committed to them, and so they're not going to leave us if we go up on our price, $2 or something like that. I've seen it so many times happen in our industry where dealers will hop around trying to get the best price, and they end up with no relationships. They end up, and they are known in the industry for they'll leave you for a nickel. And the commitment is to that person, that dealership that's with you for the long haul. I speak by personal experience as a territory manager and also as part of a distributor.
I love that answer, and I'm really happy that you brought up the dealer-to-dealer connections, because we got to be part of a women's conference seminar where we took, women to the seminar and got to see them connect and really connect with other women across the country in this same industry, in the same space. And, they talked about what they're doing on social media that's been successful. They talked about how they're, how they're doing commission for people, and they were really helping each other. And that's something really cool to be part of. And I know that that's not necessarily a standard as far as every distributor. So I think that's a really important connection to make, and to have those allies, even if you are competitors. I've seen dealers that are competitors with each other still have a relationship and still have so much respect for each other, and there's no bad blood, and there's, it doesn't even seem like it's competition. So those are really important connections.
It's always good to see that.
Yes.
And then as far as like what we were saying earlier with customers staying with someone because you're giving good customer service. Like if you're a vendor, you're much more likely to do what you can, jump through hoops, bend over backwards for your loyal customers who are always coming to you whenever there is some kind of, maybe a supply issue or something.
No, I agree, and I've got lots of stories. I've been around for a long time. I had a dealer that I got in Northwest Georgia that became a dealer of Mingledorff's simply because of the support that we gave a job that was put in by another contractor, not put in very well, but we supported our equipment. We didn't leave. We didn't go, hey, we're sorry, the contractor put it in. We didn't do that. We don't ever walk away from jobs because we don't think it's the right thing to do. And so we connected with this other dealer that was in the area and said, hey, can you help us resolve this? We'll work alongside you. We'll coach you. We'll provide you the details. And he did that. And just after that, he called me and said, I want to be allied with a company that does that. And it's everything to have that kind of relationship.
Speaks volumes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What about investing in employee training? And, how does that contribute to growth?
I think he's still around. I know his books are. Peter Drucker is a management expert. And he, very prolific author. But he made this statement. He said, every organization, whether they recognize it or not, is a training and learning organization. And if they're not, they're missing the boat. So that will give you a hint of to how much I value that. It's everything. I mean, it's everything for your employees because it communicates to your employees that we're investing in you, we're investing time, and we're investing money to let you develop your skills so that you are better in front of the customer in solving the customer's problems, because that's why we exist as a company. And so it communicates very well to that customer. I used to have, to that employee, I used to have dealers that would say, I would tell them about a class that we had upcoming. And I would give them the cost. Some of our, classes, depending on who we bring in, there is a cost to that because it's a third party. And they would go, well, I've got this person and I'd like to send them, but I'm concerned that I invest in all this money and this time in that person in improving their skill, and then they leave me. And I always used to say, and I learned this internally at Mingledorff's, this is not original with me, because the big question from them, what if they leave? Mine, the question back to them was, what if they stay? Mm-hmm. And you don't train them, and they don't, get better as they hone their skills. They don't feel that you're investing in them. So I think it's everything, and it's really double-edged, solving the customer's needs in an efficient manner, but also communicating to the employee that, you're our person. We're investing in you. We want you to get better, and there's a place for you as you continue to get better in the organization.
I love that advice. What sales tactics have you seen that drive growth in the HVAC industry?
Thinking about sales tactics, I think that the first thing that needs to happen is that the company needs to understand that sales is a process. It doesn't just start when the retail salesperson or the technician gives a price to that customer. That's not the start of it. The start of it is when that call or that contact comes in from the customer. We, Tom Schildhammer, part of our business development team, who has 35 years of experience retail selling and involved in this technical service side, he does actual class for the people that answer the phone. We call them the directors of first impressions. And part of that is kind of pre-selling and having that conversation with the customer, letting them know what to expect, what we've seen. And it's a learned experience. It's not a script. It's something that the individual who answers the phone learn, and they start the process there. And then it continues on through when the customer is visited by the retail salesperson or technician. If the job is sold, when that happens, and communicating with the entire organization. And by the way, our our business development group with Tom Schildhammer has some training on every person who would engage and interface with that customer. But it goes all the way to the point to where the last person from that dealership drives off the job site and waves to a happy customer. So it is a process. It's recognizing it's a process that involves most everybody in the organization, from person that answers the phone to the person that goes and makes the call to the installers, to the person that follows up if there's an issue, things like that. But in the middle of that is maybe the most critical part. I call it the yin and yang of the sales process. And the first part is meeting with the customer and finding out what the issues are with their system. The worst thing we can do is roll up on a job and go, okay, I've done like 3 houses in this neighborhood. I know what they're going to be dealing with. That's not the approach to take. We have to treat that customer because to them, theirs is a unique situation and they want to tell you the story, and we have to listen and we have to learn from that. Now, part of that process with Mingledorff's is HVAC sales mastery. As a territory manager, I had a lot of opportunities to invite dealers to different classes, but only had so many tokens that I could use, and they had to be good because, they're not, this particular one, because it's a third-party vendor, is not free. But I will say this, in all my years as a territory manager, I never brought a customer into a training that was more effective that can be implemented immediately. So detecting what the needs are with that individual customers. And then the second part is the yang process is through propose and close, our retail selling tool that allows us to, it's more than just a proposal. It's a prescription for the customer. We've listened to them like a doctor listens and asks questions. I stole this from a friend of mine, but if you walked into a doctor and he looked at you and he just said, "Hi, Deanna." "Oh, okay, bronchitis." And he wrote you a prescription. There's a word for that. It's called malpractice. But in the heating and air business, it's done all the time. "Oh, you've got a 2.5 ton? Okay, well, we can get you a 2.5 ton. Here's your price." Oh, it's more to it than that. The average customer buys 3 systems in a lifetime, which means they have 3 times in their life to get it right, to live with, get something that's going to take them through the next 10 to 12 years and solve their problems. And so if we don't ask those questions and then have a way to prescribe through the retail selling tool, propose and close, that we've talked about, that a lot of the listeners may be aware of, maybe actually using this resource. If we don't have that, then we don't have a way to clearly communicate not only what the equipment is and what we're putting in, but what we will do as as a dealer to make your life easier. Here's everything we're going to do. We're going to explain the system operation. We're going to clean up the work area. We're going to register your warranty with, Carrier Corporation, be that Carrier, Bryant, Howe, or Weathermaker. So that middle part, to me, and maybe it's because that's where I live in that little land, is critically important. So I hope that answered. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's a perfect answer.
Yeah, and I think, also taking that time makes me as a customer feel like you're not just trying to get my money and leave. You're explaining everything to me about everything that entails with the service and, what exactly products you recommend as an expert. What are my options? I think giving people options is probably better than just telling them this one thing.
Absolutely. They're in control.
How should HVAC companies use data to inform their growth strategies?
Somebody used this example with me, and I'll tell you where I'm going with this in a second. Not having input, and when we say data, all kind of data that would come in the door if you allow it. But I think of tracking. And I think of the first thing I think of is a financial statement. A lot of dealers either don't get a financial statement, don't get them regularly, and if they get them, they don't know, okay, now what? Okay, I've got a financial statement. Now what do I do with it? Someone said, if you don't get a financial statement, it's like playing a game. I mean, World Series is has been recently, their football game. You imagine playing the game and not keeping score. And that's what a lot of dealers do. I mean, I remember talking to a dealer probably the first year, at the tail end of the first year, I called on the person. And I said, okay, so what are we going to do for next year? What are you looking at next year? He looked at me like I was crazy. He said, well, I mean, we're just going to do what we did this year, And so he's playing from behind. He's not using the data that comes in the door with a financial statement and go, hey, we need to adjust here, we need to move here. You mentioned other market opportunities. We need to move into this opportunity, because it seems to be the market seems to be going this way. There's an interest, by our customers that we move into this way. Maybe, selling, customer service agreements, whatever that might be. But the data that comes in the door is critically important to have that. And the more we can have, and I think, we may be talking about this now, KPIs or something like that. The more we have, the more effective we are in running that business and knowing what paths to stay on and what paths to veer from.
I love that answer. So what role does team culture play in driving growth? And what are some ways business owners can cultivate motivation and loyalty within their organization?
Mm-hmm. That's good. I'm passionate about this. And, we talked a little bit about branding. We've kind of touched on this a little bit, but it's very important. I've seen dealerships die on the vine because they didn't understand that the culture of the team was important. If you were to ask my dad, who is, obviously was in the workplace years and years ago, Dad, does your job fulfill you? He would have looked at me like I was crazy. Well, it fulfills me in the sense that I'm able to put food on the table for my family. And we're big eaters, by the way. So, but this day and time, it's different. If our employees don't feel that they're part of something, let's go back to that mission and value statement and socializing that to everybody so everybody understands the why. We've talked about that a couple times. If we don't communicate that with them, everybody wants to be a part of something bigger. Certainly, money is a motivator. You've seen the polls before. Money is certainly a motivator, but that's not everything. Knowing I'm part of something bigger than me, knowing I'm a crucial part of that, and understanding where we're going as a team, those are all critical components to developing a culture of, I go back to my kids are adults now, and I think he's back now, but Barney was popular then. And at the end of it, they sing, I love you, you love me, we're a happy family. Not to be melodramatic, but that's kind of part of it. I mean, that's us at Mingledorff's, as we've gotten bigger, one of the challenges has been to keep the culture, but we've been able to do that because, we're very intentional about doing that. If a company, is so obsessed with the service call that has to be made tomorrow, and certainly that's important, but overlooks the part of we're building something, if we understand we're on the same page, then we have a better chance of providing the level of customer service because these individuals feel like they're a part of something bigger than them and that there's something for them down the road that they can grow into if they desire. So, again, I'm very passionate about this. I could go all day on that particular question, but I understand.
What do you think is the difference between someone from like your dad's generation and the generation today as far as, why we care so much about wanting to be part of something bigger and part of a team?
So this is the philosophic part of the
Yeah.
conversation. That's a good question. First thing I think is that we're more affluent. My dad was born right smack in the middle of the Depression.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go to my grandmother's house, and her freezer would be packed full. And there's a reason that was the case. She knew when there was not a whole lot,
Yeah.
and where things were hard to come by. They didn't eat something one time and go, oh, let's just throw it out. It wasn't that good. Oh, no, they ate it till it was gone. And so I think that's part of it. It's a different time. We live in a more affluent culture, whereas, employees that are, earlier in the script, not as far into the script as say I am, their life script, they can go, you know what? Okay, I'm getting paid X number of dollars. Okay, I'm happy with that. But man, I just don't, I'm not passionate about what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's, we know probably more than any other generation, we study ourselves a lot.
Yeah.
We had
I think that's part of it. Like, we have more time to
Oh,
think
yeah.
about it, to think about how we
Exactly.
feel about our job. And
social media.
yeah.
I mean,
I think we're looking deeper inside of ourselves too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're taking more personality tests, and we're taking the time to understand our own strengths and our own weaknesses, and where we're competent, maybe where we need to learn to do better. And I think it's just a different mindset, because we can do better. We talk about doing better, and we talk about things a lot more. Like, talk therapy for them was not a big deal, and not something that was kind of taboo in that generation, where it's not now.
I mean, you didn't show your feelings.
Yeah,
I mean, that
exactly.
was unheard of,
Yeah.
But now, if you look on social media, some people, what's the term, overshare?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You say, oh, I don't believe I would have shared that, but, that's kind of the culture we're into. So I think that's part of it. But we're also more aware of what other people are dealing with and what their experiences are. And sometimes it looks better. Social media is a lot of times the highlight reel. We don't see the
Oh, yeah,
we
for
don't see
sure.
the tough times. So it looks better. So we're always looking at that. So, I don't think a job should fulfill you, the whole you. I think it's part of it. And I mean, I think you can be part of something and go, that part of my life, the vocational part, I'm fulfilled because I feel like that I am doing something, not necessarily that I was born to do, but maybe so, but that I'm good at, that I'm trained on, and I understand my part in making this company successful, and here's the difference it makes. So,
Yeah. Well, thanks for going down that route with me.
sure.
What are some unique ways that HVAC businesses can stand out in a crowded market and attract new clients?
Okay. Have I mentioned customer service? I'm passionate about customer service, and I think that's critical. I've got a customer service training class that I do with Tom Schildhammer. And one of the case studies we did was with PALs. What's a PAL? In our area, in this side of the Southeast, we don't know. But in East Tennessee, the people know that PALs is a drive-through only. It's a hamburger joint. And their claim to fame is they will get you out in like less than a minute from order to rolling out. And they have, and they've been so effective that they've developed their own training institute in teaching other people how to do this. Now, not every industry, could you imagine a heating and air technician saying, I'll be off your job in 3 minutes,
Yeah.
Thanks,
take
but
your
no
time.
Yeah, thanks, but no thanks. You could blow up my house,
Right.
But they know what they're good at. And so I think the whole idea is again customer service, and and developing everybody's attitude towards customer service, and wrapping their arms around people. I mentioned service agreements, critical, and at the risk of sounding like a broken record. Now everybody knows what records are. 10 years ago, people go, "What's a record?" But now we're back to vinyl, So
That kind of reminds me of like how the save icon is a floppy disk, and I bet most kids these days don't even know what a floppy disk
you're
is.
probably right. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, well, even if it doesn't, I'll play along and act like I answered it.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's all we have for today. But since this episode will come out right around New Year's, we wanted to talk about New Year's resolutions. Do you have any like New Year's resolutions laid out? What are your plans for 2025?
Well, always, everybody is going to eat less and exercise more, or eat healthier, and certainly that's on my radar every year, especially after I eat everything in sight during the month of December. It seems like anyway. So that I'm sure that will be part of it. Never have been a big resolution person, but I do like to treat there's something about the calendar turning over and a fresh start. So certainly that is one of my resolutions is be healthier and things like that. Spending time with three granddaughters, more time with three granddaughters, can't get enough of that. So that's certainly one. And then the other thing is just see how I can get better. My passion is encouraging people. I like to invest in people. I like to encourage people. I like to notice the unnoticed. I like to watch out for that person who's in the corner. It's probably an introvert's nightmare when they see me coming. But I try to be sensitive to how much they want to engage. But I don't want anybody to be unnoticed. And, as I'm able to, I have the privilege to teach in front of our dealers and our store personnel. I like to kind of infect people with that and let them realize and challenge them with the fact that you are an ambassador for Mingalores. People will judge Mingalores maybe solely by their interaction with you. And I like to really challenge them and make them feel, because they are a part of the team no matter what role they play in. I really challenge every dealer, owner of dealerships to invest in your team in the same way, is to notice them and invest in them and let them realize just what a crucial role they play no matter what their job function is. So that's kind of where I'm headed in 2025. It's hard to believe that it's almost here.
Well, Gary, I'm so glad we get to share you. You're like the Mingledorf's hero, like the unsung hero here. Because I do, and I see you when you invest in people, and we are all just thankful. And everybody's like, man, if we could just clone Gary, we'd be living in a better world.
Be careful what you ask for.
Are you doing any adoptions in 2025? Because I'd like for you to.
Yeah, can you just adopt us?
Oh, wow. I told people, and not that I'm aware of, you never say never. What I always tell people is when you're a parent, your kids come to you and ask you for money. When you're a grandparent, you just gotta give it out.
Yeah.
Go, what do you want?
Oh my gosh, that is my mom as a grandparent so much. My mama never had McDonald's money until now.
Funny how it works, isn't it? It's funny how it works.
All right, so what are your New Year's resolutions?
Okay, well, it's hard to follow that up.
I know, right?
Mine's super silly.
Nothing.
I want to do a handstand. I want to be able to do a handstand.
That's not silly. I do not think that's silly at all.
That's like an Office episode.
Have you?
There's one of the Office episodes where somebody wanted to do a handstand or a cartwheel or something.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
have you been
watch
practicing?
A little bit. Like I've been kind of following. There's like, if you can do this exercise 10 times, you can then progress into this. So I've been kind of following that, and I've been saying it for years. I actually said I wanted to do it a few years ago, and I'm just going to finally
You just need to go like do it right against the wall. When I was a gymnast, that's what we did. Like there was like a foam wall or whatever, and we would practice, so you wouldn't go too far.
Right,
and then it was easy to like maneuver to
There's
get
your
yourself
mentor
down.
right there.
Yeah.
It sounds like she volunteered. Here's a wall.
Exactly, yeah. Once we get done filming here, we're going to practice.
I've got to ask, where does that come from?
Wanting to do it?
Why do you want to have...
Well, I've never been super athletic,
Okay.
if you can believe that. But I've I've just always thought it looked cool when people
Okay.
could just do a handstand, and I see people on social media doing it, and I'm like, you know what, that would be really cool. And I mean, there is like a health and wellness component to it too,
Okay.
because if you're, if your core is strong enough to hold yourself up in that position, then you're probably in a pretty good position health wise. So
Cool. I like it.
I did not know that.
I was unprepared for that.
I know, me too. All right, so mine are silly. I mean, obviously, just like Gary, I want to eat less and exercise more. But I want to start a gratitude journal for 2025.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, I've read this quote a couple years ago, and I've kind of lived by it since then. If you focus on the good gets better. So yeah, that actually was like something I read right before I came to work for Mingledorff's, and it's just kind of like catapulted me through the last few years, through all the challenges that we've been through, and with COVID and job changes and just a lot of changes that have happened in my life. So I do want to get a gratitude journal and start filling that out. Like, I don't know, maybe not necessarily daily, but like on a scheduled routine time. And then I want to reduce my screen time. So
oh yeah, that's a good one.
that one I think would be good for me. And it's going to be hard because I'm actually going back to school right now, which is online. So there's a lot of screen time that comes along with that. But like,
Big screen doesn't count.
Big screen doesn't count.
No.
Educational screen.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to like exclude the time that's for educational purposes. But yeah, those are my two.
Hey, those are admirable. I like them. Y'all's are unique. One thing I left out, and I know we're trying to bring this thing in for a landing, but you know how I talk. One thing I left out a number of years ago, I'm a pretty avid reader, and I decided I was going to keep a log of every book I read. So I have kept a log for a long time. And it's interesting to go back and look at particular books and see where you were in life, knowing, okay, in that year I was going through this, so that's why I read that book, type thing. So it's interesting. It's not necessarily a New Year's resolution. It's an ongoing thing. It's just part of me, ingrained.
I like that. I before I started back in school, I was reading a lot more too, and there's just so much good content, and there's just nothing like having a book in your hands for me. So that's if there's one piece of advice I would give to anybody that just wants to grow personally or professionally, find a good book, because there is so much to be learned from a good book.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree too.
All right.
That's all we have for today. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe.